Reports are that Joe Biden has chosen former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg as his transportation secretary. And when Buttigieg was mayor, that town had some issue with potholes. This seems to be the last time he's dealt with these issues. Domino's Pizza actually fixed those problems.
Way to go, Domino's.
Yeah.
Weigh in on that selection and the new energy secretary pick. Our Democratic strategist, Michael Starr Hopkins, and co-host of the Realignment podcast, Marshall Koslow. Great to see you, gentlemen.
Good to see you, gents.
Thanks for having us.
So, Marshall, people on Twitter immediately started pointing out that when Biden was running against Pete, he actually ran a whole rather amusing ad making fun of Pete's total lack of experience to run government. Let's take a look at that.
Both Vice President Biden and former Mayor Pete have helped shape our economy. Joe Biden helped save the auto industry, which revitalized the economy of the Midwest, and led the passage and implementation of the Recovery Act, saving our economy from a depression. Pete Buttigieg revitalized the sidewalks of downtown South Bend by laying out decorative brick. And both Biden and Buttigieg have made hard decisions. Despite pressure from the NRA, Joe Biden passed the assault weapons ban through Congress. Then, he passed the Violence Against Women Act. And even when public pressure mounted against him, former Mayor Pete fired the first African-American police chief of South Bend. And then he forced out the African-American fire chief, too. We're electing a president. What you've done matters.
There's also another great part, Marshall, that highlights his work on some colored lights under the bridges in South Bend. But overall, I mean, so it's sort of funny that he picked on him for exactly this, and now he's putting him in this position. But overall, what do you think of this pick? And especially in the context of Pete seems to have been doing a little bit of like cabinet administration shopping, rejecting reportedly certain posts like OMB and VA secretary. Do you think he's happy? Is this a prominent enough or a real cabinet post as he was apparently looking for?
Yeah, I'm just thankful that the rumors that he was going to be sent over to China aren't going to happen, because then we'd be subject to 4 years of Mayor Pete memorizing some Mandarin, and we'd have to see some profiles about that. So we're spared on that. But, you know, on a serious note, I think this is a good spot for him.
Yeah.
Just because, transportation, I'm guessing to certain degrees that's going to impact infrastructure, one of those rare areas of bipartisan an actual agreement where something can get done. So this is good, and it's not simply just going to be a vanity pick. And I do think to a certain degree he's well suited for it.
Oh, well, that's interesting. What do you make of this, Michael? Because I mean, clearly what he wants is to vault himself, to public office. Rejected VA secretary, apparently reported rejected OMB. Maybe didn't qualify for China. I'm not sure what happened exactly there. Clearly, this is all in the context of political ambitions. Do you think that this is the right move on his part?
So Marshall and I actually agree. I think this is a choice. Transportation allows him to not only address a lot of the infrastructure problems that our country is dealing with, but climate change is going to be something that plays directly into transportation. And so the pairing of Buttigieg at transportation and Granholm at energy, I think, is going to really be an interesting pairing, because as she talks about zero emission cars and he talks about, highways, roads, the new subway systems, things like that all over the country are going to create new jobs. I think that's going to be a really interesting pairing that could work really well.
Yeah, we will see. I mean, I will say, Michael, I remember when Trump made his energy secretary pick, of course, Rick Perry. There was a lot of consternation in the media about the fact that previously in the Obama administration, you had Ernest Moniz, who was this like highly qualified scientist in the position, great expertise. And then Trump was picking this just, political appointee, essentially like a patronage pick. And it kind of feels like Biden is making more of a similar pick to Trump than Obama actually made in terms of the depth of expertise here.
I would argue that mayors, especially the mayor of South Bend, is someone who is uniquely positioned to know what transportation needs.
I'm actually talking about Granholm here right now, though, because Rick Perry at Energy, Granholm at Energy versus Ernest Moniz at Energy, who was a scientist and highly qualified for that position.
Absolutely. I think Granholm even more so could be potentially qualified for energy, being that in Detroit, that's a city that really, cars and manufacturing are kind of the crux of this nation. And so when you talk about energy, our dependency on foreign oil, our need to create new energy techniques that's something that could really propel this country forward. So I think Granholm is uniquely positioned for this.
We've had a lot of discussion here, Marshall, about how exactly Biden is picking his cabinet positions. And we've had some very strange one like Susan Rice over at the DPC and some others where a lot of it seems to be focused more on personal loyalty and about past familiarity. I don't think that we should discount that. That actually does matter whenever it comes to these cabinet positions. But I think expertise matters too. So how do you view this whole situation?
I'm super skeptical of the expertise idea. I mean, it's not as if Mayor Pete's job, we need to stop calling him Mayor Pete at a certain point. It's not as if, Pete Buttigieg's actual job is going to literally know how the exact nature of every single transportation bill works. He's a manager. You're brought into these positions because you are running a department that employ thousands, if not tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people. So to a certain degree, I'm just very skeptical of the idea that expertise, quote unquote, is the number one thing you're selecting for. And I could easily see a world where you could hire an expert, quote unquote, but then at the same time, they have no ability to manage a department. So for example, I could see a world where you have the most effective, knowledgeable person about the way the defense procurement process works, but they can't actually manage the Department of Defense, which has, millions of people that work for it. So I think that's
literally happening.
But Marshall, I guess one pushback would be, I actually agree with you on the expertise thing. Like, I think it's highly overrated. I think it's more important to have someone there who understands the priorities and is technically competent and capable. But it's not like you can look at these picks and say, oh, he's like put together this team where that's what he was really selecting for. They're ideologically all over the map. I mean, it's really clear. Like, he had his certain buddies that he wanted to put in positions. He had certain political chits he wanted to repay. He had a certain, diverse look that he wanted to achieve in his cabinet. And so you ended up with this very random sort of selection of people and mismatching of jobs to qualifications that is going to be the Biden cabinet.
That key thing to what you're talking about there is the internal narrative of what this administration is within Joe Biden's head. And people dunk on this when they talk about the nothing is going to fundamentally change. But Joe Biden, as he's previously said about Pete Buttigieg, is trying to build a bridge to whatever the 2024 or 2028 Democratic Party is. So this isn't a Obama presidency in 2008. We are trying to build the team of rivals to rebuild the economy and do these big things. This isn't a Trumpian smash DC play. This really is, how do we get the minimum number of people that will hold the Democratic Party together when we don't control the Senate, depending on the results in Georgia.
Yeah, but Michael, I even kind of dispute that because, Pete is young and obviously seen as, from the establishment's perspective, someone they want to pick up the mantle. But actually, most of the picks have been like 60 and 70-year-old Obama and Clinton retreads.
Yeah, I would argue that the most important thing that the Biden administration or President-elect Biden is doing is putting competent people into positions right now. It's less about personality and the chess game of 2024 or 2028, but more about just instilling confidence in our institutions. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of familiar faces. That's why you're seeing a lot of, people on their second round in the White House or second round in cabinets for that very reason, that we need to rebuild our institutions and reassure the American public that the government is back to doing business in a very competent and consistent way.
Not sure some of these picks are going to do that, but we'll see, guys. All right, stick with us. We're going to have more Rising right after this.